What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Hardwired Dog Talk. I'm Nathan Beatty, and today I want to talk to you about the 5 principles of dog training that I use on every single dog that I train. As a trainer, these 5 principles are things that I impress on every client, and I repeat them every time I get a chance. Because if you use these 5 principles, you will have more success than if you didn't. So, that being the case, what are these magical 5 principles? Well, the first is time. And this refers to the amount of time that you spend training your dog. So imagine you go to a dog trainer and you do an hour for 6 weeks. Well, do you think that 1 hour, 1 day a week for 6 weeks is sufficient to be able to train your dog everything it needs to know? And do you think that it's going to retain that? Imagine going to school for 1 day a week, once a week for 6 weeks, and then saying, "Oh, I graduated. I know I know all that there is to know now." Do you think that's the way it works? No, and probably by the 6th week, you're going to forget most of what happened the previous weeks. So, what I recommend to people is 5 to 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day, every single day. And that's really important because your dog's not going to have a super big attention span. And so on average, a dog's not going to sit there and last for training 1 hour every single day. And so you shorten that time span to what the dog can handle. And every dog that I've known can handle at least 5 minutes. Most of them can handle 10. And then the working line dogs, they can handle a whole lot more. We'll just say that way. But most dogs, 5 to 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day, and they'll excel in most of what you teach them to do. That 1 hour of training once a week for 6 weeks, that's for you more than it is for the dog. It's to teach you how to handle your dog. And that, I think, is an important skill to know, because then you take the dog home and you train it for that 5 to 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day. And you follow, if it's a good trainer, they'll write you a training plan. And that's what you should utilize, and you should utilize it far beyond the 6 weeks. Utilize it for years. The dog needs to be reminded constantly of what it knows, just like we do. Otherwise, our minds fossilize. Dogs are a lot like us in a lot of ways. And that brings me to the second thing. Just like us, dogs need structure. Now, out of all of the 5 things, this is probably the most neglected one that I see. I've seen people excel in all the other 5 and then fail in this one because it's easy. It's easy to let a dog have more freedom than it should have. They're great creatures. They're amazing, and we love having them around. But sometimes we need to be more disciplined about helping our dogs live structured lives, especially while they're in training, and even more so for puppies and dogs that we just rescued. So within the first couple months, their lives need to be highly structured until they become accustomed to our house. Now, all of that said, what is structure? Well, I'll give you a couple examples. If you were to get a new puppy, for example, 8-week-old, just bring them home from a great rescue, and you notice right away the puppy pees all over the floor. Well, that's what puppies do, right? They don't know that they should go outside. They're just used to going wherever they need to. Now, I know as a trainer that most dogs will not pee and poop where they sleep unless you've let them stay there for too long. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend that you put the dog in a crate by the back door. And this is where we get the highly structured dog life in a puppy, is the crate in the back door. Every time the dog is out of the crate, it's either training or playing or taking a walk or going to the vet or something. Never let the dog roam free in the house. Every time it comes out of the crate, you snap a leash or a long line on and you go straight outside the back door. Dog goes outside, You say yes, you celebrate, you play, you have fun, you do a little bit of training, bring your dog back inside, let them sniff around the house on leash, only in the rooms it's allowed to go on or go in. And I would recommend staying away from kids' rooms or rooms that are going to have small objects on the floor. And then you bring your dog back to the crate after one sniff around the house. That's what I would recommend. And I would do that as long as it takes for your dog to learn its basic obedience and potty training. The dog needs to earn more and more freedom as time goes on. And then once your dog is well trained and you trust it not to chew things up or not to get into stuff, that's when you allow the dog total freedom. And I still, at that point, wouldn't immediately let the dog on the furniture. You have to set boundaries for your dog. Does that mean your boundaries are going to be the same as mine? No. Does that mean you need to go to the extremes that I go to? No. But you need to have structure in your dog's life. Otherwise, your life will be miserable and your dog's going to destroy everything you own, especially if you're like most of the United States and you just get a dog because it's cute. And then you end up with a Malinois because of the status or a Border Collie because of how great they look. And they end up tearing up everything you own. Malinois end up aggressive and dog reactive and all of that stuff because you didn't provide it structure. Providing structure will eliminate a lot of the bad behaviors. And I would rather crate a dog for a couple months and then let it live free the rest of its life than not let it live free and destroy everything and then have it be put down. So structure saves dogs' lives and it saves you a lot of grief, and you only have to do it for a limited time before you have all the freedom, or the dog has all the freedom anyway. So I said more about that one than I will about the rest because it's often neglected, unfortunately. But anyway, let's move on. The third principle is consistency. Consistency is also difficult. It's super easy to get into once you have the habit down, but all that consistency means is training around the same times every day, 3 times every day, and making sure that you don't let your dog get away with stuff. So the way I tell my clients is your dog needs to be able to do something 10 out of 10 times. And if it doesn't do it, then you need to correct them. On the other hand, if your dog does something wrong once, it needs to be corrected once. So for example, if your dog does a bad thing 10 different times and you only correct them 8, well, then the dog didn't learn what it's supposed to do or not to do. And so you need to just stay vigilant and correct your dog every time that a problem comes up. Now, does that mean that you're going to automatically shock your dog every single time it does something? No, that's not what I'm talking about when I talk about corrections, and we'll get to that in just a minute. In order to teach your dog something, you have to have a system of value and levels of correction, and that's number 4 and 5. 4 is value. And this means that the dog must value you more than anything else in the world, even more than whatever reward you have in your hand, whether it be a toy or a treat, or whatever else the reward that you're going to hand them is. You have to be the reward. You have to be what your dog values most in the world. Because if I need my dog to do an emergency down, let's say one of the kids opened the door and the dog ran out the door, which, by the way, that should never happen if your dog's well trained. But let's say it does happen, because things happen sometimes, even with well-trained dogs. They get out too. So they run out the door and I run outside after them. And, the first thing that most of us do is get back here right now. Don't ever do that. What you need to be able to do before the dog gets to the street is say down or say come here. And as soon as your dog does it, they need to feel satisfied that they did what you wanted, because they value you more than anything else. And honestly, I would give them treats for that. I would give them praise for that, even though they did something they weren't supposed to do by running out the door. They negated that by listening to you, by doing a down or coming back to you. So you give them praise that they came back to you or that they did what you said in that instance, because it's an emergency. They run out the door, they run into the street, they get ran over, they die, and then you don't have your amazing dog anymore. And so it's important that you create the value system not with treats or with toys, but with yourself. And that's an important distinction to make. And a lot of trainers mess this up because it's not about the treats and the toys. We use treats and toys. We want our dog to understand that all good things come from doing what I want, but I want them to see me as the source of all good things. That brings me to number 5. On the opposite end, level of correction. Now, because of the value system, all good things come from you. Well, all the discipline comes from you as well. And discipline is a good thing, and your dog must understand that. It needs to be communicated to you. You need to tell it, here's what I need you to do, here's what I don't need you to do. And so how you apply the correction matters a whole lot more than whatever tool you use. And so because of how we train dogs, rewarding what's good and correcting what's bad, we don't immediately slap a shock collar on a dog and start shocking it and say sit, and then when it doesn't sit, you shock it. No, that's not how to train a dog. That creates more problems than anything else. What you do is levels of correction. So you reward a dog when it does something right, but what if it doesn't do something right? What do? Well, you start with no. And you don't have to say it sternly. You just say it unemotional. You just say no. And so if I say sit and my dog doesn't sit, I'm just going to say no, sit. So you put that no, but you don't say sit, and then when the dog doesn't do it, say sit again. Instead, you say sit and then no, letting them know that you did something wrong, and then sit again. And then if that doesn't work, what I often move to is leash training. So you move to leash pops with a slip lead. I love slip leads. They're one of my favorite tools. And so you're on a walk, your dog's pulling, and you say heel, and your dog doesn't do it. You say no, heel. Your dog doesn't do it, pull on that slip lead. And that doesn't mean to choke them. It just has to be something you do really quickly. Or you can tell your dog to sit and catch up with it. And if it doesn't do it, you pull up on it and tell your dog to sit again. And then, you make them sit. And then when they do it, you can either ignore it or you can give them a reward. Most of the time, at the beginning, I'm going to give them a reward so they understand that this correction leads to something that's good. Now then, what happens if you've tried the verbal corrections, you've tried the slip lead, and it doesn't work? The dog is still pulling like crazy. Well, then you move to prong collars. And I would move to a low-level prong collar like the Star Mark one. They're made of plastic. They're really great. And I've never had to move beyond that in 99% of all dogs. And so you get that Star Mark prong collar, put it on your dog. Most of the time, it's going to work wonders. But every now and then, which is very rare in my case, it's only happened twice, a dog has beat that prong collar, and then I just move up to a different prong collar. You get a 2.5 millimeter Herm Springer prong collar, use that. That doesn't work, then we talk about other options like the remote collar. Now, a remote collar to me is a last resort. Now, for some dogs, like hunting dogs and working dogs, I would use a remote collar a lot earlier than I would on a normal pet dog. But honestly, in all the pet dogs I've trained, I've never even gotten to the point of needing a remote collar. So most of them, probably 99% of them, haven't even gotten to the prong collar. So I would say that less than 1% gets to the prong collar, and even less than that goes beyond the Star Mark prong collar. But the point is you have levels of correction from saying no to remote collar. You go whatever your dog's doing, the correction to that needs to equal what your dog is doing and redirect him to what he should be doing. And so we always say the punishment needs to fit the crime. Well, here is the same. The correction needs to fit the action. If the action is wrong, but it's just something basic, then you give them a basic correction. If it's something really wrong, then you're going to need to redirect your dog with a little more force. So that being the case, that's all the 5 principles. So we got time, structure, consistency, value, and levels of correction. Those are the 5 principles that I think are super important and will help your dog more than almost anything else that you do. If you implement all 5 of these and you do it well in your training, you're going to excel and you're going to have a happier dog and you're going to be a happier owner. And obviously, the more you apply your training, the more time you take for training, the more structure you give your dog, the more consistent you are, the more your dog values you, the less you have to correct your dog. And then you end up being a much happier owner and a much better dog handler, much better dog owner. You start giving advice to your friends, all of that sort of stuff. You just end up having a happy life with a dog. And that's what I'm after. A good relationship between you and your dog that results in your joy. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, stay safe.